All right. I'm going to power through this because there's some brownies outside, so I don't want to get to those. So, look, what I want to cover here particularly is a number of key considerations that we all need to think about prior to migrating across to Office 365. There's many considerations that need to go into Office 365, but we've bundled these or highlighted the top three considerations that we feel are of highest priority to ensure this project goes as smoothly as possible. Those three being licensing, costs and migration process. Dave's covered a number of the details there. I'm just going to touch on a bit of it here. In terms of licensing, look, there is an assortment of licenses in which you can attain. You're not stuck with one particular license across the board. That helps in terms of addressing any concerns around point number two there, the costs. And the other thing to consider is also in terms of, as Dave mentioned, those workflow mailboxes, example, accounts@xit.com.au and so forth. When you're looking at those workflow mailboxes or those functional mailboxes, it's a good opportunity for IT and the business to communicate in order of reviewing those mailboxes, because it's also an opportunity to consolidate. Over time, 10, 15 years, those mailboxes are created and sometimes their purpose is now obsolete. And it's a good opportunity to get rid of some of those. In terms of costs, look, I've highlighted there if this is a significant factor. We all know that Indiana Jones was able to dilute the importance of cost with his proof of concept there. But I guess one thing that you really need to consider, or a few things that you really need to consider when taking a cost-benefit analysis, as we can call it, to the CFO or to the accountant or whoever that may be, financial controller, is there's a lot of hidden costs associated to managing an on-premise Exchange server. Not only Exchange server, let's hold Downer for example. I think I was speaking to you just previously, I think there's over several thousand desktops within Downer. Now, I'm sure Downer has an automated deployment system in order to manage their Office installations on their desktops. But just the management in terms of going through and managing the Office applications on the desktops, there's quite a significant labour component that doesn't necessarily make it to the CFO to compare apples to apples in that sense when moving across to Office 365. Secondly, there's a lot of labour that goes into managing an on-premise Exchange server. And not just labour, we need to factor in power, cooling, real estate is something that's forgotten quite a lot about, and just in terms of hardware purchases, hardware maintenance and so forth. Finally, migration process, and Dave covered off a few scenarios in that sense as to what's applicable for you. But in order to really clarify that point, I do strongly suggest considering that readiness assessment. Frequently asked questions. We've put a few up here, but what I'm going to quickly do is go across to the board here. Someone was asking a little bit about security and data integrity in that sense. Was that yourself? And Murray, yeah. So if you guys can just expand just a little bit more about, I guess, in terms of security, is it about where the data is stored or who has access to that data, or in terms of...
So from my perspective, if customers, so users,
yep.
say, so the cloud is this bit of memory sitting up there, the storage.
Yep.
So which part of it is mine, and how is it segregated so that I know that my bit is safe to me only and
yep.
isn't going to be breached?
Okay. In terms of your data storage, or I guess your tier of storage up in the cloud, it is separated, and feel free to jump in here if you can help out. In terms of your storage container, if you'd like to put it, that is separated at the host level. So I think in the virtual world, as we'd like to call it will be separated in terms of at the host level. Only you would be able to have access to that data. And to put it short, the only time that anyone gets access to data is if it's a subpoena, I guess, from an authority level to that extent. And ultimately, the data always belongs to the composer of those documents and so forth.
So I suppose my question was more related to in our workspace,
Yeah.
we have all the storage.
Yeah.
We have administrators that are looking after, you talk about the overhead, are looking after that
Yeah.
hardware and that software. And sometimes we've seen in the workspace security breaches because somebody's done something
Yeah.
that they're not supposed to do, and they've opened up something to more people than they should.
Right.
So in terms of this big server sitting up there in the cloud, being
Yeah.
managed by somebody,
Yeah.
and I've got these virtual boundaries around my bit,
Yeah.
how safe are those virtual boundaries? Because someone's obviously still managing that big box up there that's been divided into lots of little segments.
Yeah, in terms of that security level, that's an automated process.
Yeah.
So I guess you're not prone to human error in that sense. And secondly, what's stored up in the cloud, the OneDrive piece, that is only you unless you share documents from within that OneDrive. So I know exactly the sort of concept that you're talking about, but yeah, certainly it's managed at an automated, scripted sort of level in that sense.
So on the point where you spoke about sharing documents from OneDrive,
Yeah.
how is that aspect controlled? So does that look back to say down as a directory authentication for what our policies are around that, and security controls and groups, or how is it managed?
I might have to come back to you on that, but I do believe.
You can answer that, I'm sure. So you're talking about who you share your OneDrive files with and how.
Well, using the scenario where I've got a file sitting on my OneDrive, and I've got a share file with somebody from another organisation, or
Yeah.
somebody from within the organisation, or whatever the case may be. So how is that actually? What stops me from doing that if it's outside what the policies of the company are?
Yeah.
Oh, right, okay, that's what you're saying, yeah.
So all that stuff gets set by your SharePoint admin. Okay, so you can actually restrict the sharing of files to people outside of the organisation. Okay, so it actually just does not allow those people to access those documents. So every time someone tries to access a document that you share with them, even if they're outside of the organisation, they still need to authenticate in some way, right? So it's either going to be their Office 365 credentials if they have Office 365, and if they don't, they need to log on with a live ID, right? You share it to someone outside the organisation, and so they might need to turn their email address into a live ID through that couple-step process. But regardless of any of that, right, your SharePoint admin kind of controls the policies around sharing of documents, and so all that stuff. And then even once you share a document with someone within your organisation, okay, you can set policies to how long that document is shared. You know, you can revoke access to that document at any time, and all of this has a master level control by your SharePoint admin.
That's audit trail as well.
Is that
It's an audit trail as well.
It's audit trail, absolutely. Everything is audited and
Is
tracked.
there compliance standards or anything from a security data?
Yeah, so the best place to go to as to what Microsoft, the best resource, okay, that you could read in and out as to what Office 365 does is a place called Office 365 Trust Center, okay? So go ahead and type that into your web browser, right? And that will give you the full ins and outs of how Microsoft controls the data, right? So from a technology point of view, how that kind of works. Who has access to the data, right? And the answer to that is if everything is working well, no one, okay? If for some reason an engineer needs to go in to fix something, right, and that's the only time that they will have access to the data, there's various people within the data center that need to give the all clear to give access to that. So they're all different kind of security clearance levels. And it's kind of like with the nuclear codes where three people kind of turning the key, do you know what I mean? And again, all of that is kind of tracked and monitored. So the chance of someone getting access who works in the data center, right, is impossible without at least two other senior people knowing about it. And all of this is kept on a audit trail that gets read by the various security experts at Microsoft. So all that information is available on the Trust Center, okay? And that gives you what they look after from a digital point of view, how they manage it, what the physical security like is at the data centers, and then who has access to the data, how long they retain and store data, and what that data can companies for. So that is the best resource you can have to be able to answer any questions. If there is an element of that you are not getting the answers for, and there's a certain point that you're kind of interested in, filter them back through Bryan, and we can connect you with the local security expert with Microsoft who can answer any questions you may have or concerns.
Someone raised a question about Office 365 benefits. I hope we've covered enough information in that sense. Data storage, security and privacy. Murray, that's probably, oh, that was you, Richard?
Yeah, certainly interested to make sure that the data centres are now in Australia and redundancy is within Australia.
Yeah.
One question though, is that all the data, or I understood there's things like Active Directory which authenticate identities of users that may be stored globally, would that be right?
Well, the Active Directory normally comes out of the same data centre. We'll double check that for you. I don't want to give you the wrong answer. I've been told that every single bit of Office 365 data is going to be stored in the Australian data centre. I'll double check if there's a caveat around Active Directory and how you come to sort of back to it.
And my other thing was about Australian and New South Wales government privacy guidelines, but I presume that would be covered in the trust centre area.
Yeah.
Look,
Microsoft would say that they comply with those.
have a look through that. If you don't, if it doesn't, right, by all means send it back. We have our CTO here at Microsoft, by the gentleman named Greg Stone, has just done a whole stack of work with the government, right, on our data centres and our cloud products and how it conforms and works with the Australian regulatory, commissions and whatnot. So if you can't find that information, circle back there. He's written a whole stack of white papers that I've tried to read a couple of them, but it's not really my area of interest.
Sometimes it's like a read on
They're very long, they're like thick. So, but anyway, if you want to gain access to those, we can happily share them.
Oh, whatever your interpretation from someone ideally.
Yeah.
Yes or no.
Yeah. So have a look at that. If you're not getting anything, circle back through here and I can find that.
Okay. And just say, goes all well, you start up, but then something happens and you terminate the agreement.
Yep.
The data's still yours.
Yes.
And Microsoft presumably would not keep any.
No, you own, it's your data, right? Microsoft is just caretaking it, and if you want to come off Office 365 for whatever reason, there is migration.
And just a situation where you've got people who've left employment, they've been using Office 365, but they've left, and you want to keep the mailboxes.
Yep.
You don't have to keep paying for the whole 365 bundle with everything. Can you have a scenario where you have a license just to keep an old mailbox for a certain period, or? What do you do with that?
Yeah, it depends how you go ahead and so that you'll speak to the guys about licensing and the different options you have, right? So there's two different real types, but there's a real subscription one where it's like a monthly subscription, okay? And in that case, you can just turn, no commitment or anything. You can turn a full Office 365 tenant into an Exchange Online tenant, which is what they call to maintain that data. You can keep all that data and just store it on premise and just cancel that subscription if you want to for a while, then put the data back up. I mean, there's a whole different types of options, but yes, you can chop and change the plans.
Yeah. Okay. You can.
And there's some really good features built into it that say if you have or people in your organisation who might be using Office 365 on their iPads and their phones and their PCs, right? And it's their own personal devices, this is quite a common scenario. And then they leave the organisation, the guys can click a couple of buttons and work through the tools and be able to pull back any of the Office 365 corporate data that is on those devices and remove them from those devices or remotely, right? So they might have their personal iPad, they might have their OneDrive for Business synced on there and they've got their corporate email, right? They've also got their own personal Dropbox account, they've got their own personal email account and photos and whatnot, so you can't really go to them, hey, before you leave, give us your iPad, I'm going to wipe it, right? Because then they come and go, hang on a sec, this is my iPad, I've got a whole stack of stuff on it. But there's some stuff that you can do through the Office 365 admin portal that allows you to wipe just the Office 365 data from the device, and then they can carry on and be on their merry way. So they're things that are
Right. iPhone 6 compatibility. Yeah. And finally, file sharing. Who raised that question? Yeah.
Happy with that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Look, a couple more questions that we've got up here. I'll quickly dash through them. I think we all understand the difference between Office 2013 and Office 365. One's a standard installation, the other's a subscription-based, and there's other internet-enabled services that come along with Office 365 as well. Will Office be identical on a PC, a Mac, and a mobile device? The quick answer is no. Each product is designed to work on the designated platform that it's being installed on. Even version numbers might be a little bit different. Is the internet access required for Office? For some functions, yes. So in terms of activation, user administration, plans, and so forth, yes, internet access is required. Live access to OneDrive it is required. But if you install the OneDrive app, you do have access to your data offline. As soon as you reconnect, it will resync. In terms of internet access. If you do not connect your device to the internet for, I think, at least once in 39 days, your Office product reduces down to a reduced usability mode, which is sort of all your documents become read-only, read and print only. To reactivate your application, all you do is just reconnect to the internet. Does my organisation keep control of our documents with Office 365 subscription? The answer is yes, absolutely. Can I try Office before I buy? Yes, that is available on the Office website, to which we'll include in the URLs that we'll send around. And where is my data stored in terms of data sovereignty? As we spoke about just briefly before, it is now in Australia. Are you ready to take off with Office 365? This is the important part that I wanted to cover. If we can all think back to the most successful project that we have managed, we have been involved in, or that we have conducted, where the user base or the recipient of our project, for them it was the most seamless sort of activity or experience that they had. And if we can think back in terms of the reason why it was so successful, and 99% of the time it's because excellent research or extensive research went in, extensive planning went in, and potentially we had some experience early on in our career which exposed us to this sort of project. And your Office 365 migration should not be anything less than that, because I'm sure you guys know very well is that the Office 365 migration has huge exposure into your business. It's not just about who you're delivering to within IT, it's not just about who you're delivering to within one particular team, it affects the entire organisation. And that's why we're so strong on this readiness assessment. This readiness assessment brings in that experience, it brings in the planning, the research, and it gets you 80% of the way in terms of, we estimate 80% of the way in terms of deciding what it is that you need to do in terms of, and consider in terms of moving across to Office 365. Going through very quickly. Why you need this assessment? So again, it's to gain a deep understanding of your current IT environment. We all know our IT environment, but we don't necessarily know what it is in respect to an upgrade path like Office 365. It's also to accelerate your migration in terms of Office 365. It has the potential to eliminate a lot of costs associated to unforeseen circumstances in that sense. It brings all those unforeseen circumstances to the surface. It also has the potential to uncover features that you were not aware of that could potentially benefit your business. There's a lot of features, as Brett was going through in terms of Office 365, that can bring an enormous amount of benefits to your business. What's included in your report? Look, this is a complimentary report, but for what it is, it's actually quite detailed in terms of what we include in the report. There's a number of key considerations and potential roadblocks that you need to eliminate before you migrate. We also provide a recommended license breakdown, so that in terms of we get an idea of what your user base is and what workflow mailboxes you have, and we'll break that down into types of licenses that you may need. We'll also consider different employees within your business, potentially people on the road and so forth. Hardware and software upgrade requirements. So obviously when you carry out some potential software upgrades, there will be some hardware upgrades required as well. And these upgrades may be required in order of upgrading to the Office 365 platform. A high-level migration plan, and finally an estimated cost of migration and hosting, which I know is quite an important factor before a business case can be approved for migrating. How long will this assessment take? Look, it's just a little bit over a week. We spend about a day on site in terms of, we do a bit of a workshop with key stakeholders within your business, and then we take that information away and develop a report for you off-site. During that week, we may email or contact you for further questions or clarification around a number of variables. And I guess, what's it going to cost? Well, the answer is nothing. To be genuinely honest, it is a skill that we've acquired within Excite IT. It's something that we're very good at, and it's a part of the business that we're wanting to grow. Hence, the readiness assessment being complimentary at this stage. I guess just to wrap things up, our contact details are up there. I'd just like to point out a couple of things. There's the feedback form that is included in the pack that you guys are receiving. If everyone can please just take literally a minute out and just fill out that feedback form for us. And finally, I think we'd like to just do the lucky door prize for whoever entered the, or put the business cards in the fish bowl at the front there. We're going to draw that. Marianne's going to grab the fish bowl for us. And I'd just like to, while you guys are doing it, thank you all for attending today.
Bryan, are there any big numbers that have been promoted around? You talked about there's reduced cost in the overhead of managing your own equipment back on site. The idea that the upgrades are transparent now as opposed to deploying patches and the infrastructure associated with that. Are there any numbers associated with the cost benefit analysis around what the ongoing cost reduction of maintaining your environment is?
Yeah, so we produced a couple of formulas or a couple of sheets which demonstrated a cost saving as a result. There's a bit of detail that goes into that in terms of the size of the environment, the number of employees associated to managing. We look at some ticket counts in terms of trends, in terms of dealing with faults or the upgrade paths and the exceptions as a result of those faults. So yeah, there are some big numbers in that sense coming through, which offset the associated cost. If there is one. In that sense, some businesses are showing that there's an immediate cost saving as a result. Some are showing there's additional expense, but when you look deeper, there is a cost saving potentially. But ultimately, this is about adding, I guess, additional productivity and additional functionality into the business in that sense. So, Dave, if you can do the honours.
Murray.
It's a $50 My voucher, Murray. We've got one more.
Thank you.
And Terry Stone.
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, everyone, thanks so much for making the time. I do apologise that we did go over, but we really enjoyed having you guys over. There's a brochure there that includes our detail about our readiness assessment and a bit of a description about Excite IT. I do encourage you to read more about that readiness assessment. And if there is anyone else that we need to speak to within your business that will help this process along, please feel free to include that in the feedback form, or otherwise don't hesitate to contact us via the details on the brochure or our business cards that are out the front there. Thank you very much.
The amber, green, red functionality in front of you. I think someone who's online needs to open up and take your available.